I mean, Venezuela is close to the numbers that we saw during the 2003 strike when Venezuelan production dropped to about 650,000. So we're about to reach the lowest level that Venezuela's ever produced. And the question is, like, can it go to zero? And so this is...
Helima, can it, I mean, honestly, could it go to zero? If you don't have electricity.
If you don't have electricity, if we get to a situation where U.S. service companies are blocked from operating there potentially, there are a whole host of things that could really further compress Venezuelan output. So we have to watch what's the trajectory on further sanctions on the country. But the humanitarian crisis is just so severe that, you know, this thing potentially just gets much lower.
Yeah, I mean, let's put this into perspective. Venezuela in 1998 produced 3.7 million barrels of oil a day. Then Hugo Chavez came in. Now they're down to 700,000, maybe 800, 900, whatever it is. It's one ship a day, basically. That's it.
I know. I mean, Venezuela.
If that.
The Venezuelan crisis, I keep saying, is a crisis that's multi-decade in the making. Like, it never fully recovered from that 2003 strike. And so this is something that's a tragedy foretold. It's just a question of, is there a way back for the country?
And by the way, Maduro's hanging on.
Maduro's hanging on. I mean, that's
as dictators are wont to do.
And this is what we have been concerned about, that if Maduro hung on, we're going to have further sanctions to try to get him out. So this crisis is just prolonged. And the Russians have really been the key savior for Maduro. They are the ones, along with the Cubans, that are providing the support that allows him to stay in his seat. And it raises a real question for the United States. Is this another Syria? Have we drawn a red line that we can't enforce in terms of exiting a leader?
Do you think it is?
I think we're in for a protracted crisis right now. And the question is, you have U.S. officials, senators like Marco Rubio, saying we need to do more. We need to back words with action. So I think there's going to be more U.S. pressure on the country.
Crude oil up 40% this year. It appears that OPEC's strategy is working, or is this all Venezuela?
Well, I mean, Venezuela is a part of OPEC, so they're making the cuts compliant.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Is it a combination of Saudi resolve and the Venezuelan catastrophe? Absolutely. And I think it's, you know, we now see President Trump making the phone calls this week to the Saudi crown prince saying, look, I'm going into another Iran sanctions decision that's coming up the first week of May. He's asking the Saudis, put more barrels on the market, saying to them, Iran is your existential crisis. You're going to help me out. And the question is, you know, are the Saudis going to once again surge output to help Trump? That's the big question, I think, going into the next few weeks. We're going to have an OPEC meeting at JMMC in May, and that will be the critical question of where OPEC is going.
Yeah, and it's really, every time we hit about 60, President Trump sends out the tweet, not just the phone call. And it seemed to have worked once. I mean, if oil continues to go up, you expect the president to just continue to put pressure?
I think you're going to see the social media, you know, commentary, but yeah, the private pressure. And it's really the bilateral pressure on the Saudis. It's really saying, look, you encouraged me to exit this nuclear deal. I did it. I'm applying sanctions on Iran. You have to backfill the oil. And the question the Saudis are going to have is he going to grant more exemptions? Is he going to basically get us to oversupply the market? Because there's a sense that the Saudis oversupplied the market last summer. And you had UAE's oil minister out there yesterday saying, look, we're not going to do anything until you show your hand on Iran.
Quickly, Saudi Aramco bonds, $100 billion in implied interest.
Yes. I mean, it shows that basically people think highly of that company.
I wonder if it also shows they believe that oil will remain fairly elevated. I mean, the bonds as a proxy for the price of oil, which, as Jim Cramer's talked about, is a proxy for the market as well.
I mean,
so Saudi Aramco, in some weird way, maybe Aramco's big bond offering and demand is some weird proxy on the U.S. equity market.
I mean, I think
maybe it's early. My brain isn't on yet.
No, but I do think it is. I mean, for Saudi Arabia, again, we talked about last week. I mean, this is all good news for Saudi Arabia in terms of investor appetite for Aramco, buying the Aramco story, low levels of debt, great acreage. I mean, I think the question is now, do they even need to do an IPO after this?